this is Roger, thanks for dropping by. This potting session this time, rather than mounting, is the two Dendrobium infundibulum hybrids. So this one is infundibulum crossed with lowii with its very large bud, which I'm hoping isn't going to blast. We've got new roots coming at the base here, so that's why I've chosen this time. Quite a few new roots. There's a nice little cluster of new roots coming out at the base of that one, so that this is good timing for that one. I've been waiting for that one to do that. And this is the other infundibulum cross. This has actually got a name, Formidable, and it is in effect Formosum crossed with infundibulum, and it does have a bulge at the base of the last growth, which is probably going to be a new growth, but it has some little light green nubbins also near the base, which may be roots. They might turn into growths. At the moment I have no idea whatsoever what they are going to be. No idea at all. So we shall wait and see. But they're both going in pots, and they're not getting any moss this time. Stayed far too wet during the winter. And I want to keep them in smallish pots, but not be silly, if you know what I mean. By excluding the moss, I can go for a larger pot. They're all the same size. I think actually that one's a bit shallower, so we'll use that one for the smaller plant. Now what I'm going to do for these is, because they're air cones, obviously I'm going to put some large bark in the base, keep the air cone clear. It's important for these to be able to dry in the winter. That's why I believe they've failed. I'm using small bark, which over time does compact a bit. But I'm hoping to get round that by adding in some big chunks, which should leave air gaps. So that is a mixture of small bark, pieces of wood, pieces of non-bark, flaky bits, and small bark. Flaky bit. The trouble is these little flaky bits like that, look, they're already, they're not hard, and as a consequence they're the first bits to break down. And yet you pick up another bit and it's rock hard. So it's just a bit of hit and miss really. Anyway, there's some good sized pieces in there, along with the small bark. So a bit in the bottom. And this needs to sit proud of the media. I would go as far as to say as not even on top of it. So I'm going to plant it quite high in the pot. I'm just going to hold it still, and I need to go a little bit careful because these roots are fragile. They look quite thick and chunky on this one, but they're not. And the fact that I've got some larger pieces, they'll get caught up between the roots and leave air pockets. Now, strictly speaking, with a plant like this, that's not the end of the world, but I prefer not to have them if I can avoid them. So just by keeping my eye on what I'm doing, if I see a little air pocket, then deal with it. You know, just poke in towards it, get something to find its way into the air pocket before you make it, while you can see what you're doing. That's the idea anyway, and you can always just lean back and look at the outside of your pot and see what you're doing. Have you left any big gaps? No. Good. But I still need to add a bit more in, because I need enough around the roots to be able to hold the plant. Otherwise it will just waggle. I'll probably have to stake it. But I'm not pressing these roots down, because I've decided that these two plants didn't like being in compacted media with no air, which was the result of one, leaving them in the pot too long. Naughty boy, stop doing it. It's because I'm busy. And then I'm just going to gently push down the outside, hoping that the bark will just bind enough to hold the plant still. It's not going to have to hold itself still for long because it's got new roots coming out. As soon as they start poking down into the media, it's secure at that point. It is a little bit wobbly, so I'm going to try and find one cane that's reasonably upright, like that one, and see if I can get a stake in there. And of course, like a half-wit, I haven't brought my tying materials round, but I can do that in a minute. I don't want these videos dragging on. You know, tying a piece of raffia around a stake is not exactly rocket science, is it? So a lot of these roots are sat on the surface. The new roots are on the surface. They'll head for moisture. So I'm just trying to fill in a few little gaps. I don't mind some of these roots being on the surface. These are older roots anyway. It's not them I'm that interested in. It's the new ones that are coming soon that I can actually see. Right, so we just tie that there, and that will make it secure. So that's that one done. Next is the big tall one. I might have to get a bigger stake for this. These squiddly little ones. Now these roots looked awful. They're not brilliant, but they may shoot out. And hopefully I've got new roots to come on this in the not too distant future. Now that'll go in the slightly larger one, which is promptly going to fall over, I expect, but we'll see what we can do. Big stuff in the bottom of the again, make sure I get some air around. I know this is a slightly bigger pot, so I'll need a bit more this time, won't I? Oh, there's some moss lurking in there. So I'm not very wasteful. If I've mixed up small bark and moss to do a repotting, when I've finished I try and hook out as much moss as possible, bearing in mind I pot dry, so my media is dry. I can just tip it straight back in the bag where it came from, but occasionally a couple of little bits of moss escape. That's good, there's some nice big bits in amongst that. So, in the bottom, not many of these roots are very long, and those that are very long are bendy. That's the one I'm worried about. It's already got a crack in it. Still, perhaps it will shoot out higher up. They all got to go in there whether they like it or not. And this is going to be set slightly towards the back of the pot, because the strong new growth can then point towards the centre. And I've got a huge big hole under these roots. It's hollow underneath the plant. So I'm going to fill that up before I even think about doing anything else. So that the base of the plant is still sitting on some media, not in it, sat on it. And any new roots that do come out should head downwards. I'd like that a little bit higher in the pot, so just gently lift it. Now try and fill in some of the other gaps gently. To end up with no air gaps this time round is probably going to be quite difficult, because these roots are thick and fleshy and quite close together. So if you see what I mean, it's going to be difficult to not leave any gaps. Not filling the pot up too high around the back, because that's an old growth. It's not going to shoot out and it's not going to root, so that can stay low in the pot. Stop that getting soggy around the base. How are we doing here? And up towards the top, being careful of where my new growth is. Yeah, you're going to wobble. That was almost inevitable. Get some of this bigger stuff up around the base of the plant, I think, and keep the air around the base. Make sure I haven't got any over the top of that new growth. That's still wobbling, so it's going to have a stake. And I want to stake the oldest growth, not the latest one, even though the latest one is an old growth now. It was new last year, but it's not now. If you've got an air cone pot, worth bearing in mind not to put your stake straight down through the middle of the pot, because that's where the air cone is, so it won't go down as deep, so it won't have more chance of staying secure. Again, I will tie that off. Now, are you going to stay upright? In the pot, I mean. Yeah, that's not bad. We're slightly offset here. This one does come over this way a bit, but then that one's leaning very slightly that way, so between the two of them they're central weight-wise, so it shouldn't wobble around. Right, so that's those two done. As I say, I need to tie the stakes to make them secure, and we'll keep our eye on this nice bud here and see if it progresses. So that's those two done. Both have got infundibulum in them, and one's got Lowii, one's got formosum. Both black hair types, and the black hairs don't really show on the older canes. And with this bit of sunshine I might be able to show these a lot more clearly, because a lot of people have said they can't see them. They look like little tiny specks on the canes. They are in fact the tiniest of hairs. So that's what they look like. Yeah, okay, that's those two done. Short and sweet. See you next time.